Warning, this video is not intended for persons underneath the age of 13. Thank you.
I've never advocated war, except as means of peace. So seek peace, but prepare for war. Because war never changes. War is like winter, and winter is coming. Ulysses S. Grant. No, seriously, war never changes and winter is coming are both referencing the same quote from a Civil War general. Hey everybody, it's the year is 1999, and today we are returning to the world of Fallout for another D&D Homebrew adventure. Last time we talked about the Fallout series in general, and it was really more of an excuse to talk about Dungeons & Dragons in a post-nuclear setting. That video went over the environment, technology, and creatures that you see across the series. Today we are going to be specifically talking about New Vegas. The game takes place in the remains of the state of Nevada 204 years after the Great War, so in the year 2281. Thanks to the efforts of the mysterious Mr. House, Las Vegas emerged from the war largely untouched. Now, a major thing about the game is interacting with various factions, and there are three main factions. There is the New California Republic. This is the spiritual successor to the United States of America, and it's built upon the ideals of democracy. Next up is Caesar, or Caesar's Legion. This is the spiritual successor to the Roman Empire and is built upon the ideals of conquest. The third is Mr. House and his robot army. This is a new political power that emerged mostly after the war. The main conflict of the game is for control of the Mojave between these three factions, and this could make for a really cool campaign setting, where the party has to choose which faction they ultimately want to stand by. Now, for most of the game, they can play all sides until they're forced to pick one, or maybe they end up trying to achieve a diplomatic ending. Now, in the course of New Vegas, you receive the choice to replace Mr. House with another robot who is programmed to agree with you. So I think that you should be able to make him side with either the Legion or the NCR. That said, I doubt that even a party full of rogues who all have expertise in persuasion could get the NCR and the Legion to be friends. Factions are a really cool concept to incorporate into D&D game. These are established groups that could operate as, some kind of support system or as dangerous foes. The Dungeon Master's Guide has a section on factions that I'm going to somewhat refer to here. In Fallout, there's the concept of reputation, and in the DMG is known as renown. This tracks how much a group likes you. At certain thresholds, you gain different ranks, which affect how these groups treat you. Your base reputation is 0 by default, but it could be different if your character's backstory involves a particular faction. When you do right by the faction, your renown goes up, but when you harm the faction, it goes down. In New Vegas, it's not so much that your renown or reputation goes down, but rather that your infamy goes up when you hurt a faction. So if you've done a lot of good for a group, then you're idolized. If you've done a lot of bad for a group, then you're hated. But if you've done a lot of good and a lot of bad, then you're a wild child, and just a bunch of categories in between. Now, reputation would track by player, not by party. If the party completes a quest together, then their reputations will all go up together, but if, just one person does something bad, it's not necessarily going to harm everyone. This also means that if a character dies, when that player makes a new one, the reputation resets, unless of course that player happens to be from that particular faction. Now, a friendly faction could provide the party with shelter, specialized services, and adventuring gear. On the other hand, a hostile faction may hunt down the players and try to kill them. Perhaps as part of your character's backstory, he or she is from one of the factions. I'm going to run through them here, as well as some suggested backgrounds that you may have. If you were part of either Caesar's Legion or the NCR, then you would probably have the soldier background. I don't really think that you could have started with Mr. House, though, since he contracts with people on a job-by-job basis and his main employees are robots. For the other factions, there's the Boomers, an isolationist tribe who took over an old U.S. Air Force base. If you avoid getting blown up on your way there, they'll give you a chance to prove yourself. If you started there, I guess you could have the soldier background or perhaps Outlander since they're so separate from the rest of the world. There's the Brotherhood of Steel, a religious order that believes in the regulation of technology. If you come from here, your background is probably Acolyte. The Followers of the Apocalypse, they are a charity group that provides medical aid to those in need. If you came from here, your background could be Sage. I also made a custom medic background for the modern D&D video. I'll link to that in the description. The Great Khans, an organized group of raiders with a warrior culture. If you came from here, your background would probably be Outlander. The Powder Gangers, a group of escaped convicts, although they do cause a lot of conflict. Yeah, an escaped group of convicts that use stolen explosives to kill people. If you came from here, your background is probably criminal. Then there's the White Glove Society, a regal group with a history of cannibalism. If you came from here, then your background is probably as a noble. Now, you can also have reputation with individual cities, but the most important of these is Freeside, a city on the outskirts of New Vegas that's controlled by a group of Elvis impersonators known as the Kings. If you were a king, then your background is probably entertainer, but if you come from the slums of Freeside, then your background is probably urchin. There are also the Fiends, a group of chematic raiders that control Vault 3 and cause trouble for everyone that they run into. They don't really count as a faction in-game, but they're at least somewhat organized, so perhaps you can find a way to work with them. I'm not sure what background they would be associated with, perhaps the Iron Route Bandit from Curse of Strahd. Now, these backgrounds are, of course, just suggestions. After all, in any group, you need a wide variety of skills and roles for people to perform. And by the way, the faction agent background would probably be applicable with any of those. Now, these factions can be a great source of quests. To use the Kings as an example, their leader, just known as the King, in New Vegas, hires the courier to investigate a fraudulent bodyguard and get help for his dog Rex. You could also end up helping to negotiate peace between the New California Republic and the Kings. Now, we would be here all day if I tried to go through every quest in New Vegas, so let's just run through a few more quick examples. If you're part of Caesar's Legion, then you'll eventually be tasked with assassinating the NCR president. If you stand by Mr. House, Yes Man, or the NCR, you'll be tasked with saving him. Vault 22 contains an advanced botanical garden that the NCR believes is the secret to promote vegetation growth in the Mojave, so you could be sent to go collect their data. And there's a bottle cap factory that's causing inflation that the Crimson Caravan wants down. More of a smash and grab type quest, I guess. The Boomers have a large infestation of, well, quite literally large, because the ants are so big, and their power plant that they need cleared out. So, I guess this could be more of, a hunting quest. It's a big game, and there are a lot of quests that you can borrow from. Remember that when you complete a quest for a faction, the party's reputation with that faction will go up. Of course, the other big reward for completing a quest is the money. In Fallout New Vegas, there are 3 forms of currency. Well, technically 4 if you count pre-war money and 5 if you count gold, but there are 3 primary currencies. The New California Republic prints its own paper money in the style of US money. Caesar's Legion uses the denarius coins. And then, of course, the primary currency is the traditional bottle cap. For the most part throughout the game, you can only really buy things in caps. If you want to, instead of using gold pieces for your game, you can just use caps. To not overcomplicate things, I would make 1 gold piece in D&D equal to 1 cap. Now you may be wondering, I have all these caps, how should I spend them? Well, you can buy new equipment to perform better in the field, put them in your savings account, invest in a 401k, or you could gamble with them. Oh, hey, that's a great idea. Now, New Vegas is built on the preserved remains of Las Vegas, so gambling is a big part of the game. This is actually my preferred use for the Legion coin. To me, there's just something hilariously satisfying about being a random mailman who takes down hordes of Caesar's best men and then wastes his money on human vices. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that most of you don't have casino equipment just lying about your house, so here's how we're going to simulate it in-game. First, when you enter any casino on the New Vegas Strip, they're going to take your weapons from you. You can conceal small stuff like a dagger, but they don't want you waving around your guns or swords.
Weapons. Get, pack it up.
What? I just put the...
So, how are we going to play these various games with dice? Well, let's start with roulette. First, the player is going to choose a number 2 through 20. You then roll a d20 out in the open, and the player hopes that that number matches what they picked. If the numbers do match, then the player gets back 15 times however much that player put down, and if it doesn't, then they lose their money. The players can also choose to bet between 2 through 10 or 11 through 20. If they get the bet, then the payout is double whatever they put down. The reason why the player can't pick the number 1 is to ensure that the odds are ever in the casino's favor. For slot machines, the players put down however much money, then roll 3d6s. If all three numbers match, then the player gets a payout equal to the amount of money they put down times the sum of the dice. So if you put down 100 caps and get 3 sixes, then you get 1,800 caps back. By the way, there are 216 possible combinations for the results of a 3d6, and only 6 of them are payouts using this system. Lastly, we are going to talk about different types of card games. If you want to, you can actually play stuff like Texas Hold'em or Blackjack with your players, and then they win or lose the old-fashioned way. This would mix up the game by not making everything dice-based. Alternatively, we can handle this in a similar fashion to how Xanthar's guide recommends doing gambling, and that is as a downtime activity. Although I will edit this up a bit. The player will put however much money down and then make any 3 relevant skill checks. Some suggested checks are insight to read the other players, deception to keep your poker face, investigation to figure out the odds of the card you need coming next, persuasion to get other players to bet the way you want them to, sleight of hand to hold your cards carefully. If you're proficient in card games, then that's of course going to be relevant here. Now, per Xanathar's guide, the DC is calculated separately for each of the 3 rolls at 5 plus 2d10. The results for success or failure are as follows. 3 successes means that you get double your bet back. 2 successes means that you get 1.5 times your bet back. 1 success means that you only get half of your bet back, which is a net loss. 0 successes means that you get no money back, and you obtain debt equal to however much you put on the table. I'll say that if you fail any one of the checks, then you can try to make up for it with some type of sleight of hand check to cheat. The DC for this is going to be equal to the original DC plus 5. If you fail, then you get caught. You immediately fail all 3 rolls for that gambling session, and you get into trouble with the casino. So if you're caught cheating, or even if you win too much, you may have to use stealth to sneak your way out, or deception to get yourself out of trouble. Well, there is gambling in D&D. Feel free to use that anytime you have a casino in game, not just for a New Vegas themed campaign. Remember to have fun, although if you gamble to win, you've already lost. Be safe with your money, and that goes for real life as well. If you have a gambling problem, don't be afraid to get help. I'm going to link to some resources down in the description for that. Well, that's all we're going to go over in regards to New Vegas today. I could probably keep talking about this subject, but this video is already getting kind of long. Maybe I could do some more New Vegas videos, perhaps dives into each of the factions, or recreating individual characters. Man, I didn't even get to talk about the perks either. Yeah, this is definitely going to become a series on the channel. If you want to check out some more from me, I have an actual play podcast called Enter the Dungeon, the Brotherly Pudcast. Link for that is in the description. I run a gaming channel, and at some point I want to play through New Vegas as a specific roleplay class like Barbarian, Bard, Cleric, or Rogue. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day, and God bless.